Hello, and thank you for engaging with this virtual training from the Department of Diversity, Equity, and Poverty. Today, we will be covering the fourth component of the Affirming Racial Equity tool, which is Equitable Pedagogy. It is important to understand that within the larger framework of racial equity within Jefferson County Public Schools, the Affirming Racial Equity, or AR tool, is one of the central resources available to JCPS employees seeking to ensure our schools are actively pursuing racially equitable education for all students. If you have already explored the AR tool and the AR tool guidebook, you will already be aware of the extensive utility of this tool. The AR tool can be leveraged by all school faculty to enhance outcomes for Black and Brown students. It is important to note here that regular utilization of the AR tool, especially in PLCs, supports the JCPS racial equity policy and the future vision for curriculum, instruction, assessment, and pedagogy. Although the JCPS racial equity policy outlines many expectations for the central office and larger district, several expectations are most readily influenced by classroom educators. In regard to diversity in curriculum, instruction, and assessment, there are specific expectations all schools, school leaders, and classroom educators, regardless of content area or grade level, are expected to pursue. In the Department of Diversity, Equity, and Poverty, we strive to ensure that the mission and vision of the district lives in all areas because we believe that in JCPS, racial equity is everyone's concern and should be a commitment made by all. While all components of the AR tool address the JCPS racial equity pillar, the other two pillars of JCPS are further supported by one half each of the AR tool. Moreover, the AR tool aligns with the ongoing work addressed through the JCPS 6 systems. These connections are not exhaustive, but are featured here to showcase the interconnectedness of the work being done within the Department of Diversity, Equity, and Poverty. As previously mentioned, this virtual training is focused on the fourth component of the AR tool, Equitable Pedagogy. If you are still building fluency around the AR tool, this is a timely space to pause and reflect, preferably with your PLC, on the various lesson descriptors listed here. What is equitable pedagogy? This is an awareness of individual students' needs, interests, experiences, and preferences, the ability to recognize when a different tool, method, or approach is needed to encourage engagement or participation. Teachers maintain high expectations by modifying how individual students are supported in meeting them. We give our students opportunities to grapple with real-world issues, topics, and problems. When necessary, we group and regroup our students in ways that meet their various social, emotional, and academic needs. And finally, we are ensuring that all students are equipped with content-specific vocabulary so that they can authentically and successfully engage with the content. What does equitable pedagogy look like? We might walk into a classroom and see students working cooperatively on a shared task. We may also see students being monitored by teachers frequently as far as their progress and responding to trends in a timely manner. Teachers are seeking feedback routinely regarding their students' sense of belonging, comfort with the instructional setting, and comfort in the teacher's classroom. We are frequently communicating with all stakeholders regarding student progress, challenges, and successes. We encourage our students to embrace failure as part of learning while providing specific feedback, encouraging reflection, and allowing for revisions. And finally, we want to see teachers using feedback language that doesn't punish or shame the individual. Rather, it places emphasis on the skills and additional skills required to achieve success. What are the do's and don'ts of equitable pedagogy? Do provide examples that are based on students' cultural, linguistic, and lived experiences. Do use vocabulary building activities. Do engage multiple learning preferences and modalities throughout a lesson. And do vary the ways in which you group students and for different purposes. Do not remain within your comfort zone of instructional techniques and strategies. Do not assume that a student without their hand raised doesn't have an answer. Do not assume that the way you learned will work for all students. Do not lower expectations for some students. And finally, do not forget that students deserve multiple chances to show mastery. This image that you can see here has been borrowed from a document called What is Equity, and it can be found on the National Association for Multicultural Education on their website. And underneath the section of the R tool called Equitable Pedagogy, you can also see this page linked. So here in this image, you can see a series of hands and a series of arrows pointing upward. And you'll notice that when we provide equality as far as the opportunities that are presented to students, those arrows are not going to necessarily push all hands up toward those items along the top, including positive academic identities, social justice action, and positive social identities. However, if you look at the right-hand side of this image, you'll notice that with equitable opportunities, no matter the student, we are pushing them all towards that same success measure there at the top. So finally, as a PLC, there are some questions for you to consider. First, how will the instruction provided to students permit them to be actively anti-racist and break down systems of inequity? Second, how will our instruction move us closer to meeting the expectations of the district's racial equity policy and the school's racial equity plan? Third, how will we ensure that we are providing both equitable intervention and enrichment for all students? And finally, how specifically does this component, Equitable Pedagogy, of the R tool support the work of your content area? We thank you for engaging in today's training. As you progress through each step of the PLC framework, there are additional trainings for each component, and they can be found linked underneath each component of the R tool. You are encouraged to return to them as you need to ensure professional growth and racially equitable education for all students.